Hello and welcome. You're watching World Panorama with me, Ishan. World Panorama is, of course, your weekly roundup of all the big international news that happened in the past 7 days, and we'll be getting you a whole lowdown on all that with a special guest as well. But first, the headlines that we're tracking right now. World powers agree to seek a nationwide cessation of hostilities in Syria to begin in a week's time after talks in Munich. A spark of hope as fighting and the refugee crisis are at their peak. North Korea's claimed satellite launch takes tensions on the Korean peninsula to a breaking point. The United States and South Korea agree to talk on deployment of an advanced missile system, and that ruffles China's feathers. In the US presidential election race, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders win the New Hampshire primaries, overturning the Iowa losses. Predictions of a long drawn-out contest in both camps. And scientists have made a landmark cosmic breakthrough: detect gravitational waves from violent black hole merger deep in space. Finding opens the road for the waves to be used as a tool to study the universe. Well, our focus story for this week. The crisis caused by the displaced Syrians rushing into neighboring Turkey threatens to get out of hand. Tens of thousands of people fleeing heavy fighting in Aleppo have amassed near the Turkey border. Even while providing humanitarian aid and supplies, Turkey has restricted their entry in keeping with commitments to the European Union. With Russia and the Syrian regime keeping up heavy bombardment of opposition-controlled areas, an unprecedented humanitarian crisis lurks.
Images the people of Aleppo live for real, every day. The raging fight is between the opposition Syrian National Coalition and their government aided by Russia. Alongside heavy bombardment, President Assad, in alliance with Russia and others, have severed the main humanitarian supply routes between Aleppo and Turkey. 3 lakh people still in the city are in the danger of being cut off from outside aid if government forces succeed in encircling the city. Move out of Aleppo to the Syria-Turkey border at Kilik. Consider these people lucky, if only because they got out of the city. Mahmoud Tasia and his daughter are being treated at a makeshift hospital on the Turkish side. She has severe head injury that disfigured her face. Her eyesight is gone.
My daughter is only 6 years old. She was shot right before my eyes. She was shot with a sniper rifle by a PKK-affiliated group. Thank God only her eyes were hurt and her arm was broken.
Nearly 70,000 Syrians have reached this border in the last fortnight, looked after by aid coming in from the Turkish side, yet kept out of Turkey's gates. We fled because of the Russian bombing. They hit us with surface-to-surface missiles. They use barrel bombs. They strike us from Latakia with their rockets. What else can I say? Let the world hear that we are dying, that we are suffering a tragedy. We thank Erdogan and we hope that he opens the border so that we can cross over with our families and the ill. Our life is very difficult here. In this disturbing background, world powers agreeing to seek a nationwide cessation of hostilities comes as a desperately needed breath of fresh air. The cessation, to begin in a week's time, will not apply to the battle against jihadist groups Islamic State and al-Nusra Front. The 17-member International Syria Support Group, ISSG, also agreed to accelerate and expand aid deliveries.
And I'm pleased to say that as a result, today in Munich, we believe we have made progress on both the humanitarian front and the cessation of hostilities front. And these two fronts, this progress, has the potential fully implemented, fully followed through on, to be able to change the daily lives of the Syrian people.
Turkey says the flood of Syrian refugees could hit 1 lakh or more if Russian bombardments continue in the country. Turkey already shelters more than 2.5 million refugees from the Syria's civil war. Add to that Turkey's commitment to the EU to stem the flow of immigrants into Europe.
Our priority is to brace for the both current and prospective influx of refugees. Our primary objective is to host them outside Turkish territory and provide service for them from across the border. Non-governmental organizations have made important contributions for this purpose. We want them to continue to offer their services as we are aiming to host these people within the borders of Syria.
UN officials say they are determined to seize this new opening. The next week will confirm whether Syria's government and opposition forces are ready to provide access denied for so long. That in itself is some progress. But moving towards talks to end Syria's devastating war will still take far more than that. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And I'm joined by Dr. Awwad, a senior journalist and an international affairs expert, especially of that region. Dr. Awwad, but we talked about this last week as well in terms of the humanitarian crisis that is looming, large people dying of starvation, and bombs just keep flowing. Now, the international community is saying that hostilities would end in a week's time. Is that a real possibility? Do you see anybody backing out of the deal now?
Well, I think the international community by itself, if you want to name it, name only NATO, because the Brussels meeting in NATO was deciding what could be the future of their role in Syrian crisis. Having said that, I would say the cries in the international community, so-called, is because of the Syrian army is winning in the ground and the Russians with the support of the Russian and the other allies. Because what happened is you are trying to protect Aleppo from the external intervention. The moment the government of Syria secure Aleppo, there will be no supply route from Turkey. If you look at the opposition or the terrorist group now website and you go and see them, you will find that they have got 122 rocket grad, which can hit a 400 kilometers distance. That means they were crying, they wanted to smuggle the arm. The border with Turkey is only used to smuggle the arm. It's only now the flashpoint where the organization, the militia, are gaining a ground and able to get their weapon from Turkey. So the moment the government encircled that point and closed the border, Erdogan dreams of having the Ummah or Sultanate in Syria is being weathering out because he failed in Libya, he failed in Egypt, he failed in Tunisia, he's failing in Syria. So this is a desperate move by the Turk to blackmail the West, to blackmail we will give you the influx of refugees if you don't allow a no-fly zone. And that's why the Saudis stepped in, because they wanted to supply arms, they wanted this war to continue. The moment this war finished, I think the fight against IS will be more open to the international community to step in.
All right. But what about Syria itself? Because the bone of contention had been President Bashar al-Assad and whether he would continue or whether he should not continue. In this kind of atmosphere where there is now finally talks of peace and movement towards peace, what about a political transition? Will that happen? How do you see Syria emerge out of this crisis?
See, there are two tracks here. The political solution to the Syrian crisis is Syrian indigenous bond plan, which with the support of the international community. The fate of the leadership in Syria is not being discussed. They have already reached a point between the US and the Russian that the President Assad future should not be on the table. I think when that was the convergence of Geneva I and Geneva II, and now they decided that let us talk beyond Assad. Let us talk the priority of stopping IS and other Al-Qaeda terrorist group active in Syria. And also the future of Syria will be decided on a transitional period within the 2254 UN Security Council resolution, which speaks for 6 months for de Mistura, the special UN envoy, to speak on to find a real solution and then plan it. By the 2017, the Syrian should be able to decide the future. The fate of the Syrian president has nothing to do with the crisis. Right. Look, the popularity of the president is now gaining ground even inside Aleppo. Because if you remember, the beginning of the crisis in Syria, or so-called the revolution, uprising, is because Aleppo and Damascus you didn't have a single demonstration inside the city. Right. And remind you, Syrian capital, Damascus, and the commercial capital, Aleppo, constitute 55% of the population. So if we're talking in terms of the ballot to decide or democratic process, let the ballot decide the future of Syria by the Syrian. It's not by forcing a decision from outside.
All right, but as far as the Syrians over there in Syria, I mean, the numbers have dwindled really over the past few months, given the rapid outflow of people. And we've seen that migrant crisis happen in Europe. We saw in that story itself what was happening at the Turkish border. So, and the people who are literally dying of hunger over there in Syria. In terms of addressing that humanitarian crisis, do you think it's a priority as far as the efforts of peace that are being made right now? And what about the future? What about the people coming back from Europe? Would they be sent back? And does that lead to larger questions in the future?
Well, I think this is a very important question. At the end of the day, the Syrian people are paying the price, whether it is a proxy war, whether it is a war imposed on us, whatever you want to name it. The atrocities that are happening to the Syrian people have really been, we are paying the brunt of this attack. Imagine you have half of the population is already internally or externally displaced. This is a major catastrophe for the Syrian society, and we are facing it. The problem at the border, it was created to make it more of a humanitarian crisis. If you are now talking that let us find a solution, when the United States and Russia sat across the table and decided, let us decide politically to solve the Syrian problem, why you waited for 5 years to destroy total Syria? I mean, this is the question we are asking as a Syrian. Why our country has to pay the price for the proxy war fought by superpowers? We need a solution to the crisis first. You do not have to look at the result of it. Right. Look at the causes of it. The causes is the war, the mercenaries, the imposed on us, the arms supply from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, from Turkey, open the border. Do your homework first. Let the Syrians stay back. None of the Syrians wanted to leave the country. I think to remind you and the rest of the world, 2008, according to UN, Syria was the largest recipient of the refugees from all over the world, the second largest. By 2015, Syria became #1 in the world of the number of refugees. Why? Because if you don't give it the humanitarian intervention, you cannot militarily intervene. And that was the crux of the problem from day one. A regime change policy, followed by the US, followed by NATO, followed by the West, and it is to impose a change in the countries. You cannot impose regime change on a country like Syria, because the Syrian people love their leader, love their people. We wanted to live in peace. We were, prior to 2011, ask anybody about Syria, he will tell you what was Syria all about. The regime change policy has to be changed. I think there is an introspective look by the West and United States toward their policy toward the Middle East. They have created anarchy, Islamophobia, instabilities, radicalization. These are the outcome of what they call the Arab Spring.
All right. So indeed a lot to ponder over, and hopefully the peace process now that has been initiated does work out. At least the bombing stop for now and the food is able to reach those really in need. Thank you very much, Dr. Awwad, for coming in and helping us understand the situation there in Syria a little better. On that note, we'll step into a very short break. Still, there's lots more to come on the other side. More than 50 people have been killed in a massive prison riot in Mexico that went really out of control. It's not the first time that Mexico has faced such a clash. We'll have more on this and a lot more on the other side. Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama. Now, North Korea's satellite launch, seen by many as the isolated nation developing ballistic missile technology, echoed through the last week, threatening to rock the power balance in Asia. Besides the US Senate clearing stepped-up sanctions, there are possibilities of a build-up of a US missile defense system in Asia in response that could further strain between US and China and hurt relations between Beijing and Seoul as well.
The announcement and the reaction, at least among the North Koreans, sold to them as another leap forward in their country's technological prowess. North Korea calls its launches part of a peaceful space program, and celebrations, or at least a show of them, are big each time. This time, it said it had successfully put a new Earth observation satellite into orbit, though its last one in 2012 was little more than a dud. For the North's propaganda machine, a show of superiority. For South Korea and other world leaders, another intolerable provocation that keeps with dictator Kim's goal of a nuclear-armed missile that could hit the US mainland.
There was a unity of the Security Council in the outrage of the the missile launch, which took place after 4 weeks of the nuclear test. I think this outrage is based on the fact that this is, whether you call it a satellite launch.
Each of these illegal actions requires a robust response. Because of the DPRK's decisions and actions, we will ensure that the Security Council imposes serious consequences. DPRK's latest transgressions require our response to be even firmer.
Besides call for stiffer UN sanctions, the event could herald some big power shifts in Asia. Post the launch, the US and South Korea are set to begin talks on deployment of the world's most powerful terminal high-altitude area defense system, or THAAD, to the Korean peninsula, which in turn has China worried further deepen the US-China divide and hurt relations between Seoul and Beijing. The US insists a powerful message has to be sent out.
There certainly is an agreement about the fact that about an impactful response being necessary. That means considering a range of economic sanctions that would further isolate North Korea, and it would also mean a clear signal, or I guess an additional clear signal to the North Koreans, that the resolve of the international community here is firm.
American experts claim North Korea's latest satellite is stumbling in orbit and has no practical use. Much like its previous one, launched in 2012, the South Koreans have even released pictures of debris, yet they insist it can be used for a nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missile to reach the Americas. That sets alarm bells ringing. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
And here are some other big stories that made headlines across the world this week in our next segment, Globe Watch.
At least 52 jail inmates were killed in a battle between rival groups at a prison near Monterrey in northern Mexico on Thursday. 12 others were injured. According to police officials, as the fight began, two groups of inmates set fire to a storage area inside the jail. The incident took place just days before Pope Francis' visit to a prison in the northern Mexico city of Ciudad Juarez, an area notorious for violence between drug cartels. State officials said that no inmates escaped the prison. Two female suicide bombers blew themselves up in a northeastern Nigerian refugee camp in Dikwa on Tuesday, killing more than 60 people. A breakdown in the telephone system prevented the incident being made public before Thursday. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far, but the attack bore the hallmarks of terrorist group Boko Haram. A third woman bomber has been arrested. At least 10 people were killed after a head-on collision between two passenger trains in the German city of Bavaria on Tuesday. 81 people were reportedly injured, with 17 of them in critical condition. Officials suspect a human signaling error may have led to the crash. Two data recorders on board the trains have been recovered, while an investigation has been launched into the incident. Hong Kong's Lunar New Year celebrations descended into chaos after protesters and police clashed at a street market, leaving dozens injured. Riot police used batons and pepper spray and fired warning shots into the air as it arrested 3 men involved in the incident. Authorities say the scuffles broke out after police moved in to clear hawkers and illegal vendors from makeshift street-side stalls. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, the great big U.S. presidential election bandwagon has reached South Carolina after the first of the primaries at New Hampshire. Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Bernie Sanders won their respective primaries at New Hampshire this week, setting up a protracted and closely contested nomination process in both parties. As analysts predict, a revolution in the way the U.S. presidential elections are fought lies ahead.
We're going to win in South Carolina.
From Maine to California.
The men of the moment in New Hampshire. Strong wins for left-wing Democrat Bernie Sanders and bombastic Republican outsider Donald Trump in the second major test of the 2016 US presidential race. Both ran as outsiders, both won with double the votes their nearest rival got.
We have to thank the candidates because they really ran. We have some very talented people. And to be victorious against some of these people, even if it's for 1 week, but believe me, it's going to be for many weeks, okay?
Together, we have sent the message that will echo from Wall Street to Washington, from Maine to California. And that is that the government of our great country belongs to all of the people and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors and their super PACs.
Unlike the Iowa caucus, in which any voter can participate, a party primary is only open to voters registered with that party or as an independent. For the Republicans, Trump trumped them all, and with a big margin too. Ted Cruz, who'd made a dent last time, ended a poor third. In the Democrat camp, no more than neck-and-neck race. Sanders claimed a runaway victory here, upsetting the Clinton apple cart. And yet what comes through was a country struggling to find a candidate who can bring along disparate elements of both parties. Voters see the result as resounding rebuke to the US political establishment.
I understand that there's a lot of anger out there, and actually, well, the two guys who won yesterday are outsider candidates, so, tapping into that anger. But, what do you do with that anger? That's the question.
I think it's a very scary prospect, either one of them being president of the United States. One is an ignorant demagogue and the other is a socialist who doesn't understand the slightest thing about finances. It's a very scary proposition.
It'll be South Carolina to the primaries next on the 20th of this month, where Trump and Clinton lead for now. US political experts say the New Hampshire primary showed up the Republicans as a divided house, yet with little evidence of the voters coalescing behind any single candidate anytime soon. More surprisingly perhaps, a similar cleavage is now visible in the Democratic Party.
The results signal a revolution in both parties, a big one. And they also probably signal that this will be a long nomination race, not over quickly. My guess is that it's not going to be until Super Tuesday that we have a clear idea of who it will be who will take on Trump throughout the rest of the season. But what we do know so far is that Trump seems to have a pretty good base of support.
Two faces pulled out of the Republican race after New Hampshire. Chris Christie and Carly Fiorina bow out, leaving 7 in the Republican list. For the Democrats, Martin O'Malley hangs on, besides frontrunners Clinton and Sanders. In both camps, it shows signs of going down to the wire. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
The scientists have claimed a stunning discovery in their quest to fully understand gravity. Detection of gravitational waves from the violent merging of two black holes in deep space has been hailed as a confirmation of a key prediction of Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity. Scientists say that the finding will inaugurate a new era of astronomy in which gravitational waves are tools for studying the most mysterious and exotic objects in the universe. The breakthrough is the culmination of decades of searching and could ultimately offer a window on the Big Bang. The LIGO collaboration that has carried out this research operates a number of labs around the world that fire lasers through long tunnels, trying to sense ripples in the fabric of space-time. Scientists say that the detection is one of the most important developments in science since the discovery of the Higgs particle and on par with the determination of the structure of DNA. Eminent researchers, including Stephen Hawking, have praised the discovery. Let's shift gears now to the world of sports and bring you some big news from the sports arenas around the globe in our segment Sports Action.
Kenya has missed a deadline to prove to the World Anti-Doping Agency it is tackling cheating in athletics. It comes after a spate of positive drugs tests among the country's athletes and fresh allegations of corruption. Kenya has not been able to provide the assurances WADA is seeking and will be placed on a watch list of nations at risk of breaching the agency's code. Kenya will be given 2 months to bring in new legislation and funding or automatically be declared non-compliant with WADA. English footballer Adam Johnson has been sacked by his club Sunderland after pleading guilty to 1 count of sexual activity with a child and 1 charge of grooming. The 28-year-old's contract was terminated hours after he was dropped for Saturday's Premier League match against Manchester United. After Johnson's arrest in March 2015, the club suspended him but then lifted the ban following talks with his representatives and the Professional Footballers Association. Manchester United are set to become the first British club to earn more than £500 million in a year despite their topsy-turvy show in the ongoing Premier League season. According to United's second quarterly financial results, the Old Trafford club are expected to accumulate £500 to £510 million for the year. This involves a substantial increase in commercial, broadcasting and sponsorship revenues. Former world number 1 Maria Sharapova has withdrawn from this month's Qatar Open due to a persistent arm injury. The 5-time Grand Slam champion has been troubled by her left forearm since the start of the year, when she pulled out of an Australian Open warm-up tournament in Brisbane. She was also unable to play for Russia in last week's Fed Cup quarter-final defeat to the Netherlands. World number 1 Serena Williams is the top seed for the tournament, which begins on February 21st. South Africa fast bowler Dale Steyn, who is recovering from a shoulder injury, has been included in the 15-man squad announced on Wednesday for next month's World T20 in India. However, the 32-year-old pace spearhead's inclusion is subject to his being past fit. While towering paceman Morne Morkel was the notable omission, Riley Russo and David Wisa, who missed the India series due to injury, returned to the squad. Faf du Plessis will captain the side.
And finally, Rio de Janeiro's final 6 elite Samba troops put on a show of sound and colour early this week as they wrapped up the official Carnival parades at the Samba Dome venue. I'll leave you today with some glimpses of this out-of-the-world spectacle. Goodbye.